this is something that I think is so important. The whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, and I have to say, in a way, the American right kind of made this monster, and it's now sort of attacking them, where it became like every person who ever talked to Jeffrey Epstein, who ever met Jeffrey Epstein, somehow had suspicion on them that they were a pedophile or had an interest in.
This is no longer damage control. It feels like a counterattack imploding live. Everyone believed this kingdom was flawless, sealed, protected by wealth and fear until the response revealed more than the leak ever could. What emerges now is not refusal, but reflex a rushed legal surge, messages vanishing, powerful outlets falling silent, and one opponent choosing escalation instead of retreat, all playing out in public at speed within hours of the Epstein file surfacing. Jay-Z's name ripples through an FBI intake log linked to a 1996 Florida estate, and almost instantly, 50 Cent posts about wanting a documentary, then intensifies after warnings supposedly arrive. Jay-Z is suddenly rumored overseas. Beyonce's follower numbers reportedly plunge by millions, while the silence from longtime media protectors turns total. None of this fits a narrative meant to be innocent. The clock feels off, the movements look choreographed, and the pullback is impossible to miss. Whatever force just woke up is ancient, massive, and already sliding toward consequences no press release can halt. Before cameras blink, lawyers scramble, nerves fray, alliances crack permanently.
So first, I think we just have to say, and you set it up well, there are two real storylines here. One is what is in these files that we can see and that we can actually learn. We're going to get on that first. There's also the story about what is not in these files, or what is heavily redacted, because that is also...
The reaction inside the Carter inner circle stiffens almost instantly, and that response becomes the headline as the Epstein documents spread. Sources close to the moment say the focus is never explanation, only control. And the signals appear immediately. Posts that reference the files start disappearing. Gossip pages fall silent. Major platforms that usually chase scandal pause or avoid it altogether at the same moment. Communication shifts into legal corridors, not public ones, and the name most frequently linked to that pressure is Beyoncé's. Industry insiders describe a pattern they have seen before. Cut the reach, suffocate momentum, remind everyone who controls access. It is the reverse of how a simple misunderstanding is normally addressed. The quiet does not feel peaceful, it feels organized. And that organization becomes impossible to overlook once it crashes into someone who has zero interest in staying silent. That impact lands publicly on January 31st, when 50 Cent posts a blunt reaction to Jay-Z's name surfacing in the Epstein material, writing, "Dan, they got your man Jay and the Epstein files. I got to do a doc on this stuff." The post does not sound like curiosity, it sounds like a challenge. Within hours, memes flood in, followed by AI images, then taunting captions that imply he knows exactly where to strike. Sources around him say the tone shifts after alleged legal warnings emerge, not calmer, but colder. Instead of retreating, he escalates, floating the idea of exposure and daring anyone to shut him down in an industry conditioned to answer pressure with silence. His refusal alone becomes destabilizing. The quiet explanation circulating privately is that Jay-Z's name appears only in an unverified FBI intake entry logged in July 2019 and connected to an alleged incident at a Florida property in 1996 that is meant to close the story. No charges, no follow-up, no confirmation. Yet the reactions do not match that narrative. Jay-Z offers no denial. He does not deploy spokespeople into the media cycle. Instead, reports begin circulating that he leaves the United States altogether, a move sources near the couple call temporary, but never fully clarify. At the same time, analytics pages claim Beyoncé's online following drops by the millions within days, a visible marker of public discomfort. Her team never addresses these are not the moves of people convinced the story will fade on its own.
So what happens now is this is simply a civil complaint. And in a civil complaint, it goes through the technical legal process. Now, the distinction, Jessica, between civil and criminal, of course, is that civil is for monetary damages, right? The system can only reward you with money. There's allegations that this 13-year-old is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, suffered depression, etc. So now you go to...
Here is where the narrative starts to twist if the reference carries no weight. Why does it provoke such forceful erasure if the intake entry is flimsy? Why not crush it publicly? Sources inside the industry point out that Beyoncé has spent years constructing a brand built on discipline, calculation, and total command. And this moment puts that system under stress. Legal maneuvering replaces open reassurance. Silence replaces answers. Voices that usually speak for the Carters suddenly go unreachable. Even longtime allies hesitate, as if awaiting a green light. The absence creates room for rumors, and that is exactly what the containment playbook is designed to stop. Instead, it multiplies. What accelerates it is the contrast between who goes quiet and who refuses to. 50 Cent keeps posting. He points to his recent documentary success, taking down another Powerful figure, signaling that he knows how to convert accusations into momentum and visibility. He jokes about smelling beef and popping popcorn, packaging the moment as spectacle while making it clear fear is not part of the equation. Industry veterans stress this is not careless trolling, it is calculated pressure. By keeping the spotlight on, he forces the Carter response, or the lack of one, into harsher relief. Every passing hour without a statement adds weight to his implications. The media ecosystem intensifies the suspense. Fans start noticing that platforms known for exposing celebrity scandals avoid the topic or quietly scrub references. Screenshots spread showing posts removed with no explanation. People begin asking whether this is chance or control. Beyoncé's name surfaces repeatedly, not as the focus of the claim, but as the figure believed to hold the power to erase narratives. That belief alone tilts the story. The question shifts away from what happened in 1996 and turns into what is unfolding right now and who is steering it.
If we get to the bottom of Tupac's when that is finally revealed, 15 other will be revealed with it. And you will find that they were all committed by the same two people, father and son.
As the days drag on, the rumor that Jay-Z is overseas solidifies into accepted truth across online spaces. Even as no official confirmation ever arrives, people close to the couple insist it is merely precaution, yet struggle to explain why precaution is even required. Others murmur that leaving the country creates breathing room, while lawyers scramble. None of those theories explain why the couple refuses to issue a clean public denial. The uncertainty feeds a more unsettling reading that speaking openly could unlock doors better kept sealed. In that light, Beyoncé's position feels less like shielding and more like command, orchestrating a shutdown while waiting for the storm to exhaust itself. By this point, the original allegation almost fades behind the behavior reacting to it. One intake entry spirals into legal threats, enforced quiet, visible social media fallout, and an outsider openly daring the empire to respond. Each element alone could be brushed aside. Together, they sketch a pattern that will not lie still. The tighter the Carters' close ranks, the more room they leave for outsiders to seize control of the narrative. And as 50 Cent keeps needling that opening, the question looming over everything is no longer if this escalates, but how much strain the system can take before it fractures. What begins to surface now is that this moment does not stand alone. Industry voices start tracing lines backward instead of forward. Epstein's shadow looms not because of a single document, but because of what his ecosystem symbolizes: powerful people moving through private worlds, accusations handled like paperwork, and reputations guarded through silence and leverage. Insiders note that the strategy unfolding around the Carters feels disturbingly familiar to anyone who has watched crises like this before, when closeness becomes liability. The goal shifts to reducing exposure, not confronting truth. That reflex reframes the current response as trained behavior, not sudden fear. The darker implication is that these defenses have been tested before, only now someone with nothing to lose refuses to stop pushing from the outside.
What I've gathered from your articles, this seems to be a global network that Epstein was a part of, and I believe there are multiple Epsteins. Like, I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein was the head of the snake. Yeah, like, you know, they never go after the head of the snake. They never go after the head
of the snake, quote unquote, are just, it's the billionaire class, and so there's a faction of these billionaires in our oligarchy. And of course, the American oligarchy, you know, the American oligarchs don't necessarily, a lot of them don't have an allegiance necessarily to the United States.
As the spotlight expands, forgotten stories once pushed to the edges begin snapping sharply back into view. For years, quiet murmurs circulate about elite gatherings that leave attendees uneasy, about spaces where power feels skewed, about moments that never align with the flawless image sold to the public. None of these accounts gain force alone. They drift, brushed off as resentment or imagination, but with renewed focus on the Carter orbit, those fragments stop drifting separately and start converging. Industry veterans say when unconnected voices describe the same unease, the instinct is not to verify facts, but to ask why the same patterns keep repeating in that frame. The current silence feels less like grace and more like calculation. Beyoncé's past becomes inseparable from that calculation. Former collaborators have long accused her of exercising control that stretches beyond contracts and choreography, alleging manipulation, intimidation, and behaviors they label as spiritually unsettling. At the time, those accusations are dismissed as instability or envy. Now, they are reread as early signals of how authority functions inside her world. People close to her say she views total control as safety, and that belief shapes every decision. When the brand feels under attack through that lens, the present suppression is not impulsive, it is familiar. It mirrors how she has always neutralized perceived threats by tightening boundaries and betting that silence survives outrage. Even the marriage begins to look altered under that strain. What once appears as a bond built on loyalty and shared rise now strikes skeptics as a mutually assured defense agreement. Industry insiders whisper that separation is risky. Not because of emotion, but because of exposure. Remaining together preserves narrative control. Splintering would shatter that control and invite questions neither side once aired. That theory spreads fast online, driving speculation that divorce is not just unlikely, but unthinkable. Every appearance, every disappearance becomes fuel for a growing belief that the relationship operates less as romance and more as insulation.
There's a lot of people, 50, I feel like you don't have to say nothing, but 50's crazy. He's been like this his whole life. When he's on the block, 50's coming.
At the same time, the one figure unwilling to follow those rules keeps circling. 50 Cent's role shifts in public perception from nuisance to stress test. People who have worked alongside him describe his instinct for spotting fear, for sensing when a reaction exposes weakness. His track record of converting conflict into advantage makes his persistence feel deliberate. He is not making detailed accusations, he is provoking a response, and in doing that, he reveals just how limited his target's options really are. With every post, the continued lack of pushback from the Carters deepens the impression that they are trapped by their own silence. The wider industry pays close attention because the fallout stretches far beyond one couple. Executives, artists, and power players recognize the pattern and quietly evaluate their own vulnerability. If someone as powerful as Jay-Z must be handled this carefully, others start questioning their own footing. The Epstein files shift from individual claims into a broader warning that proximity to that world carries lasting danger. Being named, even in passing, forces decisions that expose how afraid someone might be of what else could emerge. That fear spreads fast. It rewires alliances, shuts down conversation, and transforms curiosity into obedience. And
we've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton. And
begins to spread next is a rumor that feels too precise to shrug off and too everywhere to pretend it is noise. People within the industry start murmuring that Jay-Z is not an exception, but a model, not in music reach or commercial success, but in access, closeness, and insulation. Executives, financiers, entertainment fixers, and cultural gatekeepers who move in parallel attend the same unspoken gatherings and operate under the same invisible codes. The conversation is no longer about celebrity, but about placement. These individuals are rarely seen on stages or carpets, yet their gravity bends careers and coverage. Alike, the sudden unease is not about one name appearing, but about the dread that a single fracture could reveal a wider web of connections that has never been dragged into the light.
Tonight is a family affair. I saw your mother-in-law so proud of. Yeah, we're going.
Industry insiders describe a subtle but unmistakable shift in behavior among these players over recent weeks. Trips are quietly rerouted. Assistants are instructed to vet harder. Online histories contract overnight as old posts, images, and connections are erased or sealed off. Attorneys become the first call, replacing publicists. It feels less like random caution and more like synchronized withdrawal. The fear, according to people close to these circles, is not exposure by itself, but order. If one person slips protection and begins cooperating with federal investigators, the chain reaction could be devastating. The tension is not about innocence or guilt, but about closeness and paper trails that were never intended to face daylight. What anchors the rumor is how perfectly it mirrors what is happening now. Silence ripples sideways through unrelated corners of entertainment, finance, and politics. Commentary evaporates. Invitations vanish. Figures who once projected fearlessness suddenly dodge even indirect ties to controversy. The instinct is not to argue or refute, but to vanish. Observers say this is how powerful systems move when they decide. Attention itself is a threat, not because everyone is hiding something, but because no one knows who might decide. Survival requires cooperation in that climate. Loyalty weakens and fear becomes the most valuable currency.
What do they stand to gain from it? I don't think anyone really knows at this point, because it's very, we have to be kind of speculative here, because we're not going to get like an admission from the Trump administration about what they're actually thinking. They're obviously worried about PR and optics. And they have continued for months to kick this can down the road and try and make it.
There is rising belief that authorities understand this choreography and are choosing patience, not storming doors, but allowing pressure to accumulate while observing who blinks first. Sources suggest the real danger is not subpoenas, but abandonment ones. Someone realizes the network that once shielded them has stepped back. The math changes overnight. Silence stops looking principled and starts looking reckless. Handing over information becomes an act of survival. That possibility alone is enough to freeze rooms, stall industries, and suspend careers mid-motion. This is where the Jay-Z moment begins to read as symbolic rather than isolated. His rumored absence, the forceful containment, and the refusal to address the public feel less like individual choices and more like messages traveling upward. A flare shot for everyone paying attention. Do not talk, do not theorize, do not attract focus. The fear is that if even one person missteps, the illusion separating personal scandal from structural exposure shatters, and once that boundary breaks, there is no way to choose who gets dragged into the light next. What makes it most disturbing is how ordinary this fear already feels. People close to the industry say conversations now unfold in hypotheticals and coded phrasing, as if the stakes are understood without being spoken. The idea that there are hundreds like him is not literal, but architectural hundreds who benefit from the same quiet, the same aversion to records, the same confidence that nothing truly dangerous ever reaches daylight. The current unease suggests that confidence is cracking, and that fracture terrifies the system more than any single claim ever could. Meanwhile, public curiosity does not cool. Social platforms keep dissecting follower losses, travel whispers, and telling disappearances. Fans argue over whether this is unfair focus or overdue examination. Critics label the silence arrogance. Supporters call it discipline. Neither side can explain why discipline looks so forceful or why protection requires such coordination. The longer answers fail to appear, the more speculation solidifies into conviction. In this climate, perception hardens into truth faster than facts ever have a chance to catch up.
Sometimes you receive more with not doing well than you receive. I do excellent, bitch.
Yeah, we wouldn't even bring it up.
What makes this moment combustible is that control and chaos are slamming into each other in real time. Beyonce's instinct is to close ranks, to ride it out, to rely on influence and exhaustion. 50 Cent's instinct runs the opposite direction, to keep pressing until something gives. Jay-Z's instinct seems to be disappearance, distance, shrinking his physical footprint while the storm burns itself out. Those instincts clash, they scrape against one another, generating more friction and heat than any single allegation ever could. People close to the situation say the real terror is not what is already known, but what could be dragged into the open if this stalemate drags on. By now, the story feels less like a scandal and more like a fault line ripping through an entire ecosystem. Old whispers, fresh leaks, calculated silence, and public provocation all funnel into the same unresolved pressure. Nothing definitive has landed, yet everything feels unstable, and that instability keeps forcing the same questions back to the surface. Is the silence confidence or containment? Is the marriage shelter or a cage? Is 50 Cent posturing, or is he waiting for the moment to drop something far heavier? And if this is how power reacts to being mentioned, what does that reveal about what it fears most? Leave your theories and takes in the comments. Choose a side if you want or challenge them. All this story is still unfolding, and whatever comes next will not arrive quietly.